they'll say, mindfulness, that's woo-woo. That's too soft and time-consuming, for
Right.
business. That can't work. And I say, you know what? Woo-woo is the state of the world. Distracted, divided,
Right.
gridlock. To me, that's woo-woo. I mean,
Erik, I
great.
want to just thank you for agreeing to come on to the Consultant on the Coach podcast. This is my good buddy Josh.
Hi, Josh.
Hey, we've been communicating a lot in the email. I do a lot of the email
Oh,
work.
yeah.
So
Yeah, good.
I am a trained executive coach, and Josh is a trained consultant. So we come from two completely different perspectives. I don't understand everything that Josh does, but I see things from an executive coaching
I have no
standpoint.
idea what you do, so it's okay.
That's okay. Well, we complement each other very, very well.
And to recognize what Erik brings to the table. So we like to say, Erik, that between the two of us, we have 40 years of experience. But then as I read your book, I realized you alone have 40 years of experience. So I
maybe
thought, so you double our experience.
I don't know if it's Steven, though. I think you guys still probably got me, but
No, we're glad to have you on because it's your book was great. We enjoyed reading it. Got a
awesome.
lot of questions.
Great.
But
And now, are you still in northern Colorado? Is that where you're located in God's country?
I am. Today I'm in Steamboat, Colorado.
Awesome,
Steamboat,
man.
okay.
I spent 5 years in Denver, and it was always my plan to move back if my business ever failed. Fortunately or unfortunately, my business never failed, so
not
I
a good
never,
That's not good.
I never moved back to Denver.
Where are you guys today?
Oh,
We're in central Washington, so a place called
right.
Yakima. So a lot of agriculture,
Awesome.
just down to earth, great folks. About 2 hours
Great.
from Seattle. So,
Great.
so one of the things I just sort of want to open us up a little bit. We'd love to hear just a little bit more about you. We obviously read about you in your book, but we'll release this before some folks even have read the book. Tell us a little bit more about you.
Well, I would say that starting with the relevant parts, I was pretty successful, or very successful early in business in my 20s. I was the CEO of a North American subsidiary of an Australian real estate group and traveled all over the country, had responsibility for Western Canada and all over the US and traveled out of a Los Angeles base. And just really hit me in my real early 30s. I was overweight, wasn't, I'm an athlete, but I hadn't worked out in 5 years. I was working 20, when you work for the Australians, so I ended at 6 and then they opened.
Right.
So then I would get on with my bosses who also traveled the globe every month. So they'd say, hey, why don't we meet in Houston on Sunday? Oh, great. That's just what I wanted to say. I was single, and I just had an aha moment. They transferred me to Boston, and I'm from Maine originally. And I got there, and finally there were enough problems in town. I didn't have to travel. And I bought a scale and got a beautiful apartment overlooking Boston Harbor, and got on the scale and said, oh my God, I got to make some changes or I'm not going to be around very long.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I did. I left that job. I lost some weight. I started running again and got those things. I met my wife, my now wife, and I found yoga, which was my first entry into mindfulness.
Got it.
And it was kind of accident, I don't even know how I found it. There weren't studios all over the place then. I did it with a DVD. And I also decided to go back to college and get a PhD in economics. I said,
Cool.
I got to find some purpose in my life. I just, business, I'm good at it,
Yeah.
but I'm just not fulfilled with it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I went that route. And a couple of years in that, my oldest brother, who's a poet, introduced me to meditation. And I watched him. He was estranged from my dad, who was a football coach. And, my dad was, you will play football. My brother Bruce was, I don't know if I want to play football. And anyway, so the whole family was kind of strained over. They used to talk like through me. What Bruce say? What dad? You know what I mean?
Ooh, I played that role. I get that. We're alike. Yes, that's called triangulation. I learned about that in college.
And I watched my brother get closer and closer and closer to my dad. And then when he got close, my dad opened up and they got back and I got my whole family back. We just had I think our 42nd annual family, my dad's passed, but annual Holsapple family reunion at our lake house in Maine. And I said, yeah, I want some of that. And I watched one person change. My dad didn't change. He was in his 70s. He didn't change. But I watched my brother change and change his perspective and change the whole world, for me. So I said, yeah, I'll try it. So I tried it. I had immediate results, and I was a closet meditator for years. It can be really private. You don't have to tell anybody what you're doing. You don't have to go on
Sure.
a podcast and say that, what you're doing. You can just change your operations. But, and years later, one by one, people at my work would start coming to me and say, I'm noticing a difference in you. What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
And I became somebody that could talk to people, that would, because I ran 100 miles an hour, but I'd slow down and talk to people about things, a little more mindful. And we started a little seed group at our business. First, it was a couple of us where we'd read a book and talk about, mindfulness, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
Before I knew it, the room was full.
Mm.
Management team got together and changed the vision statement to mindfully creating community for LC Real Estate Group.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a game changer. Everybody's on nonprofit boards and making a big difference. And everybody doesn't meditate, but everybody doesn't need to meditate. But there's a mindful culture.
Mm-hmm.
And that motivated me to kick off Living in the Gap, where we
Yeah.
do leadership training for mindful leadership training for executives, professionals. So that's it in a
Cool.
nutshell.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
here
thank
today,
you.
And that gave me the motivation to write the book that you're talking about, Profit with Presence.
Yeah.
So
that's
the book
great. Thank
Profit
you.
with Presence, how long have you been working on this book? Is it a 6-month project? Is this your lifetime project?
It's a lifetime.
Tell us more about this.
It's a lifetime project.
Mm-hmm.
I started about 5 years ago. I taught at the university for 20 years at Colorado State in the business school, and I came out of that 5, 6. I don't know. Time flies, and I started this mindful leadership. Started, with a of material and workshops, and they grew, and so I had some material, and then during COVID, I wrote it,
Hmm.
basically.
Yeah.
So what do you want to accomplish with the book? Is it hey, this is what I want people to remember, or what for someone that picks the book up for the very first time? What do you want to leave with him or her?
I want to change the business conversation. I love business. I love capitalism, and I think it can work for everybody. And I think mindfulness is what's missing in it.
Hmm.
I just think if those that can give do give, and we broaden our perspective a little bit and start listening to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think it's business that'll get us out of this mess that
Mm-hmm.
we're in, the distractiveness, the divisiveness, gridlock.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, business is going to say enough.
Mm-hmm.
We can't operate anymore. It's terrible for business now. We're still able to operate. Our system is so efficient. But at some point, business people are going to say enough.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go. And I also think I've witnessed what happens in business. First of all, in business, we got all races, all genders, all political parties, all mandated to work for a common goal in business.
Mm-hmm.
And if you add mindfulness to that, it's just really a sweet mix of
Mm-hmm.
people getting along, which we need in the world. And then what I notice and what I've witnessed personally for me, and what I've noticed with the people I work with is then you bring it home,
Mm-hmm.
share it with your spouse, your kids get it.
Mm-hmm.
You go teach a sports team, they get it. Goes to the churches, goes to the schools, everywhere the families go. So I just think business is the melting pot. You can talk about America being the melting pot, but where really alchemy happens is in business.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really hopeful.
Yeah.
If business could catch on to it, that it could be a wildfire.
Yeah, I picked up on that in the book. I think one of the things that connected for me, and one of the things we're excited about your book, being in consulting and coaching, like Erik and we work with a lot of CEOs and C-suite executives, and the way I would summarize both our work and how I think it connects to what you're talking about is we work with a lot of folks who are in these fast-paced, highly complex business environments, and we run into leaders who will fail because I think the way I would have described it, and I think this connects to the mindfulness idea, is that a lot of leaders lack the tools and the training to help them stay focused on the most important thing, which in my opinion is like the moment right in front of them, right? The conversation right in front of you, the issue right in front of you. So many leaders are so distracted and they just lack the tools and that training to be present, to your point, right? To be mindful of, I'm in this moment with this situation. and so easily their mind is distracted by the 100 other things that are vying for their attention. Does that resonate? I mean, does that kind of connect to what you've experienced?
And the irony in it is, if you talk to a lot of those, and I do, they'll say, mindfulness, that's woo woo, that's too soft and time consuming, for business. That can't work. And I say, you know what? That's not right. Woo woo is the state of the world, distracted, divided, gridlocked. To me, that's woo woo. I mean, mindfulness is focus. Can I choose what I want to focus on, like the person right in front of me?
Right.
And I'm gonna go away, and I'm gonna go. When I say go away, I mean up into my thoughts or my judgments or whatever. I'm gonna go, but can I notice I go and bring myself back?
Right.
Can I notice it? And as soon as I notice, I'm present again. Can I be there, and set my phone aside and say, no, I can spend 5 minutes with somebody. It's okay. It's not, the phone's not going to blow up.
Right.
I'll be okay.
Yeah.
So I think it comes down to, the executives taking the lead, because if it's going to happen in corporations, it's got to happen from the top. It's not going to be like, oh yeah, they should be mindful. It's going to have to happen from the top and be bought in.
Absolutely.
And to say focus is worth, and also the other thing is, people think it takes way longer than it takes. We start people with 2 minutes of meditation, and just try to be consistent with it and work up to 10 over several months, so it doesn't take, and then what you pick up in efficiency and focus, way more than makes up for it. And everybody at work struggles for time. So work's the ideal laboratory for it.
Right.
To say, hey, let's be a little more mindful, and just say, let's be a little more focused.
Sure.
You don't need your phones at the meeting. If you need to make a phone call, step out.
Yeah.
We're going to focus here.
Don't flip through the phone on the meeting.
Well, is there anything more distracting meeting than to have people around the table not paying attention?
Well, or passive aggressive, right? For those who don't want to be there. I've seen that a lot too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
and
I've been as guilty as anybody. I'm not just pointing the finger. I think it's a culture, that we need to, and candidly, business caused it. The internet, I came out of with my PhD in 96. That was the first year we had email. From there, the dot-com boom was in the late 90s. And then social media. Business is the one in there grabbing all our attention. It's wonderful but it's not going to stop unless we say, no, enough.
Right.
I'm going to take my attention back. I'm going to take these things so that I can focus when I choose.
Yeah.
And then when I walk home, I have that same ability to focus on my wife, although that's harder, because people we know, I think it's even harder.
Yeah. Familiarity.
So I can focus there if I choose to, and kids, and I just think it's talk about mental health. Like when we have a discussion at our company about kids, and we're all over the place politically. We say, what are we on? Oh, we agree on that we don't like school shootings, and we agree mental health is a very big part of it. We don't agree on what laws should be or what not, but what do we agree on? And there's nothing cheaper or more efficient than mindfulness. It doesn't cost anything. Just silence.
Yeah.
It was interesting. Not only am I a coach, I have my own coach, and in working with her, the number of times I went into coaching sessions where she would start with anywhere between 3 minutes to 10 minutes of what she would call body work. And so I have found it's just been amazing how much that has helped me, because I get so caught up in whatever the last detail is. I almost don't even know what I think until I can get myself to simmer down and realize, what is the issue here? What's the deeper issue? So I have a question for you. The question I have, and part of it is, I get confused by words. So I hear the word mindfulness, meditation, prayer. I've also heard non-sleep deep rest. Can you just give me some definitions? What are we talking about? Are they all the same?
Sure.
Are they all different? Help me understand that.
Well, mindfulness would be the umbrella, the big package, of it. It just means my mind is full of something. It's not full of 100 things. It's full of something. It's full of a tree, or it's focused on something. And then meditation, is generally known to become familiar with. And we have an object that we practice with, like breath or a mantra, or it can be the body. You mentioned body work, like yoga is done in Eastern, in older traditions, is meditation with the body. It's not just athletics, so what it's become kind of is athletics, but it's how do I focus in my body? And anytime I'm focusing on my breath or in my body, my mind slows down. If I'm focused on my mind, it goes races more. So it's a little counterintuitive, but we work on some other kind of things. So meditation is within mindfulness. It's just one of the tools of it. And I don't everybody has to meditate, because they won't. So I guess they don't have to, but we have to. But you can be mindful without meditating. I mean, a mindful walk. But one of the problems we have is we're so divorced from nature. You know, if we spend an hour every day out in the woods with a stream and tree and whatnot, I mean, that can be meditation, can be really mindful. But in busy professional lives where we wake up in the morning, we're already behind, our email box is full, we got to go, we get, running. Meditation is, in my view, the most portable and most direct. So if people can do it or are willing to do it, it's great. If they're not, then I'd say you got to find something else that'll make you. Now, prayer would be, within that. Doesn't have to be within mindfulness. It's more thought of more from religious background. I do prayer. I'm not particularly religious, but I do prayer every morning. I also do affirmations, which are in that it's like retraining the brain. We find we have some 6,000 thoughts a day. Most of them are repetitive. They're not all that they're not all that helpful, a lot of them. So we learn in meditation to let them go, and we don't have to we can just select thoughts. We don't have to grab on all of them. And then prayer, which you're talking to God, or an affirmation where you're really talking to yourself, is retraining those neural pathways so that when we're on automatic, something different comes up. I think it's more impactful if you meditate and had mindfulness to create a clearing rather than just putting that on top of a really busy mind. Do you know what I mean? So clearing out first, I find, is really useful. And trying to retrain the brain to be, because we're mostly automatic. The science says like over 95% of our actions are just the next habitual thing. So what I say is I want to train my habits to be consistent with my commitments.
Right.
Because if my habits are one way and my commitments are another, I'm going to have a hard time fulfilling my commitments. My habits will take over.
Yep.
So I need to train the two. I need to get rid of some habits, some older ones, and have habits that are consistent with who I say I am and what I want to do.
Right. And that actually connects to a lot of podcasts we've done around, and we've talked about habits a lot. We've talked a lot about values and how to help. Erik does a lot of great work with leaders around just living to those values, identifying them, setting habits.
Yeah.
So just sort of fair warning, given the limited amount of time, generally with these things, I always feel bad because I like to parachute into sort of topics really deeply. And I could show you pages of questions I've written out for you. We could probably spend 3 or 4 hours. So it's probably going to feel a little abrupt, but I would love to dive into a specific topic if we could.
Great.
And I have a few. We won't get to all of them, and that's okay. That's why we have the follow-on podcast for us to break things down. But one of the topics I would love to get into with you, among many, is the sub-personalities.
Oh,
so
great.
you referenced, I was trying to unpack it, and I was drawing a lot of notes and questions all over the place. Because I think it's important for our audience to think through that issue, and I want to understand a little better. Several questions. First question around that is, my initial impression was it sounded to some degree like language or things we've read and we've actually reviewed in books like StrengthsFinder or Working Genius. I don't know if you've seen Patrick Lencioni's latest book on Working Genius.
I think I've seen that one. I'm familiar with StrengthsFinder. Yeah, Working Genius.
Yeah, it just came out last year. We did actually a bit of a podcast series on it in November, I think.
Yeah, I
Anyhow.
don't think I've seen that one.
Yeah, the idea is basically we all have 6 working geniuses, or there are 6 working geniuses. We tend to work in 2 of them. Everybody has 2, basically, is a general construct.
I'll have to check it out.
So yeah, it's from Pat Lencioni.
Yeah.
But you can always see our podcast first if you wanted to.
Great.
That's a plug. Anyhow, question was, can you tell us, I read about some of your sub-personalities, which I appreciated that transparency. Sounded like some were good, some were bad.
Yeah.
But then what I didn't see, maybe I missed it, maybe it was in the appendix and I missed it, do you have an assessment tool, or is there something people could do to sort of arrive at what theirs are? Because I couldn't tell if yours sort of came just to you over time and practice, or if there was how'd you come to it?
We come through, and I came through it. There's a guy named Dr. Roger Strachan.
Okay.
That ran the Center for Creative Choice, and
Yeah.
now my son Ryan runs that, and he's in the middle.
Okay.
He's towards the end of getting his PhD and doctorate, and so I think we'll have more on that. Right now, we do not have just what you'd call an assessment tool.
Okay.
There are some facilitators available. I'm a trained facilitator. We do it in our workshops. There are some other ones. I populating selves, I think I recommended in there as a possibility for someone to get up to speed on it. But it's a coming science, so it isn't there as much. But it's and you mentioned some good and some bad, and we say really there's no good or bad. It's noticing it and what you do with it.
Okay.
And we find that once and they're genetic primarily. Like I have a genetic entrepreneur, it's just since I was 5, put me behind the cash register, I know what to do.
Yeah.
It just was natural. So I have these sub-personalities, and we find with awareness that I can start to notice which ones are surfacing in different situations. And I say, who do I want on the field? I can put these different players, like my negotiator, which I call my way, or my entrepreneur. But if I'm going on vacation with my family, my wife really doesn't like those parts to come with us. So I have a lover and I have a adventurer that I say, okay, well, I'm going to set those parts aside and bring these. So
got it.
Highly an awareness tool that says, hey, and everybody has different ones, we believe. They can become, there's a lot of work on archetypes that come back from Carl Jung, some are sabotaging parts, some are, heroic parts, things like that. This one refines it a little more and actually says everybody's unique like a snowflake and has these different parts. They may have tendencies, but pretty independent. Once you start to that, and then what we work on is then we say, okay, how do you organize these? And I organize mine through my soul. Somebody else may call it something different. But I have to have someone that says, okay, who's going to play in this situation? I find if I go to a city meeting, or if I'm going somewhere with my kids, or if I'm going to a team meeting at work, I have to have different parts of me show up. And I also have to watch parts that might sabotage me.
Okay. Yeah, and you're starting to answer, my other question, really, I think you're getting to, so let's keep going on that track.
I like that, because it does get into what I looked at as well, too. You talk about sub-personalities in the book. You say, wise elder yogi, another sub-personality. Yeah. Is that along the same lines or different? Could you explain more about that?
Yeah. Well, no, it's the same thing. That's what it is. Like I have a wise elder yogi that's, developing and I'm growing into. That's my spiritual seeker. That's who's living in the gap.
Right.
Those kind of things versus, but I don't, that he may play a role, but when I go into a business meeting, it's more my entrepreneur.
Right.
Another one is interesting in that realm and business realm is I don't have a manager. I create business. I am awful at running them.
And
I don't like the details of it.
And that's why you'll love The Working Genius. That's exactly what. That's exact same as the.
I'll check it out.
The main. Yeah. But
I lack tenacity too.
Yeah,
tenacity
me too.
Or even going EOS implementer. That's not me.
But so to go in that path a little bit. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, I just really think that psychology is going this direction,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a direction. It's powerful, and I'll give you an example. Like my son Ryan struggles from depression, just absolutely refused to take medicine, to take pharmacy on it, and it just uses this entirely to use his other subpersonality parts, his athlete and other parts to get going and to recognize it. And I've just watched him transform depression into something that was a week at a time to something that's an hour or two, and watching him work through it.
Hey, can you talk a little bit more, because that was really helpful, and I think connects to the book where I was reading. What's the difference when you talked about, because the only reason I was pausing on this one was because as I first read about the subpersonalities, I was thinking about them as sort of negative, like they come out when they shouldn't. Mm-hmm. But then I also, you kind of referenced also the soul-directed life versus the subpersonality-directed life. But then, so I was trying to figure out, but then you just mentioned several good examples where the subpersonalities can be positive versus negative in terms of helpful. So can you tell me more about like the interplay of the soul-directed life and how you pull in the subpersonalities in a positive way? It sounds like you've been able to do. Like, tell me more about that.
Well, for instance, I have a part that's a manipulator. Mm-hmm. I see things 3 or 4 steps ahead. I'm a real estate developer, right? I can and have in my life manipulated things for personal gain. And that's not a great use of that tool. And I find that it's kind of yucky, and I try really hard not to do that, and I've repositioned, but that manipulator is also part of my developer and part of my salesman and part of promoting living in the gap or the book. I see things 3 or 4 steps out. And I see how to lay things out so things together in an organized fashion. So it can be a part that has a negative connotation, but through my soul, I say, no, I'm not going to use that just for personal short-term gain.
Got it.
No, it's a skill I have, and I'm not, and I do see things out, so I'll try to use it for good.
Okay.
That would be an example of it.
Got it.
Most parts have, a redeeming quality, or another way to say it is a lot of times our biggest strength is also one more hair over. It's our biggest weakness, depending where that balance is.
Yeah,
we go too far with it. So
yeah.
So how do you figure out what that line is? Because there's a lot of gifts that can also become curses and vice versa. How do you figure out what that line is?
Awareness and experience. You notice. You notice when it is. I notice when, I have another one, I can be really quick-witted, sometimes sarcastic. Sometimes that's great and humorous. Sometimes it's really digging, and I hurt somebody's feelings. So I have to watch that. But another time it's light, and sometimes it lightens up the whole room. Just lightens up the whole mood, but I have to watch it, and it's through awareness. And the other thing is I just did it day before yesterday, and I went back in and apologized to somebody. I said, I'm really sorry. I was so sarcastic. I was trying to be funny, and I think I might have hurt your feelings. I'm really sorry.
And how did that go over? How'd that feel?
It felt fine, and I acknowledged it and said, it didn't hurt me, but I appreciate it. I appreciate you saying something. And that's through awareness and just saying, hey, and also if I clean up that mess, I'm less likely to do it the next time because I don't want to go back and apologize. So it helps me train my brain not to hurt people. I don't want to hurt people.
Right. Next topic, you can jump in.
You jump to the next one.
All right, I'm gonna pick up a different one. Changing topic. Sorry, a lot of this parachuting in. Thinking a lot about, I liked what you said about just the potential for business to be a force for good around just solving some of these societal issues. I think one of the things I want to dig into was just the topic of truth and what that means and how you think about that. Because a couple areas, I read things like, I think in chapter 1 you said, if you believe, then it can be true. Near the end, you also had said, I think in section 3 about, I think just not quoting because you don't know what you said, but for the folks who haven't read it, great thinkers and scientists note that while we cannot know truth, we can generate closer and closer approximations to what may be true.
That is what I would say.
And I guess what I was thinking about that in context of trying to build a better society that's, building better dialogue, how do we establish authority and law and order, or even a sense of what is just, being called to speak up on behalf of those who are being poor or oppressed, injustice, when it felt like there was also sort of a very esoteric view of truth. Like, how do we actually reconcile those two? Because that felt very contradictory to me. So how do you think about that? How do we...
Well, the world's a mystery. It's a great mystery. Look, just think about consciousness. We can't even agree yet on exactly what it is. And part of my conceptual framework is just laying out some of the new, and it's not new, the new academics are coming up to agree with what, the 5,000-year-old Hindu and Eastern philosophers have said about consciousness, about it's all consciousness and everything's there. And that's exciting to me. But we still don't even have agreement on that yet. So I'd say, what I say, I know my truth. I know who I am and what I stand for. I don't know the absolute truth of things. And I don't, maybe I will after death and go find that, but I don't here in this body. So, but I search for it and others search for it. And I also think that's why democracy is, to your point, such a beautiful thing, is we need to compromise and agree on and come up with compromise. And we're not all going to agree, on everything, but disagreement's fine. It's the arguments and the divisiveness.
Okay.
If you live in a democracy, let's agree that the majority, gets it. And I ought to be able to convince enough people to the majority or not get my way.
Right.
Or move, if it's that dramatic for me. I don't know that any of us are going to know the truth. And we all never will, but more of us agree that we don't know the truth. The Tao Te Ching has a great quote that says, when people feel they know, they're hard to lead. When they know they don't know, they find their own way. If we all agree that we don't really have all the answers, we work together and come up with the best what we have and move together and compromise. And we've lost compromise. We've lost, mindfulness has what we call the middle way. We've lost that. And social media has been a big part of that. There's the bells, we used to have a bell curve where it's, there's tails of 5% on each tail and 90%. Do you guys have that in school?
Yeah.
Well, now it doesn't work now. It's like the tails are, where the weight is.
Yeah.
So it's out of whack, and we have to find the middle way again and get ourselves back to compromise, just moving things along and realizing, if it's 49% one and 51, just beating the other side, you're still going to have half the world against you. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
Well, it isn't going to work.
You're reminding me of like school and the importance. I think it seems like we've lost a sense of remember the term is social contract, right? There's this recognition that, as part of a democracy, we have a social contract, and yeah, you don't always get your way in an election. It doesn't mean you can throw a fit afterwards. You have to compromise and find agreement and get along. And
work it out. So wait for the next one and try again.
Right. Yeah. And so I like
that's the only way it's going to work.
In a sense, this is a business podcast. The beauty of business is we can come up with a disagreement on, okay, this investment's better than this investment. Well, at the end of the day, capitalism, everything needs to be bought and sold. And, well, if it doesn't work, it goes out of business, which is really kind of the great equal.
Well, where I think we've lost our way even further is now you see so many businesses leaning to political ideologies, which is only these investors, only these, customers, that is craziness in business. Why would I limit my profitability to a certain segment? We have trouble getting employees. Why would I only want certain employees? Why would I only want certain customers or certain investors? I think that's a really slippery slope.
Hmm.
Say what business ought to just want to move things. I want to, I'm in business to do business. So anything that prohibits that, I'll still have my own ideologies for the ballot box and for dinner conversation and whatever else. But when I, as a CEO, bring that into the company, what am I doing to all the employees that work with me? Making them feel less than, or they've got to agree with what I agree with, or I think that's a slippery slope to bring that in. And I don't think it's good for business.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why I say businesses ought to say, hey, we're only going to back politicians that move things along. Left or right, I don't care.
Right.
We have to agree somewhere and move things along.
Yeah.
And that's good for business. I mean, South Africa in apartheid, right?
Mm-hmm.
The international sanctions came in and shut down the business community, and they said enough.
Yeah.
We need to do business. And the business community told the politicians, move us,
Right.
get us through this.
Get us along. Yeah.
How bad does it have to get here before the business community says, move us?
Right.
Yeah. That's part of my motivation for writing the book, was just business just doesn't realize how powerful it is. It's the same thing as, like, you hear kids say, why would I bother to vote? I got one vote, it'll never matter. Well, it matters.
Mm-hmm.
Votes, we can vote in whatever we want if we all agree on it. I mean, business could shut this whole thing down like anytime and say, hey, we're not doing it that way anymore.
Yeah. Another question I had too about truth, but related to business. I think this gets into it a little bit in terms of good ethical business. You mentioned what I read, and I think I don't have a quote, so maybe if I'm summarizing, forgive me if I didn't get it right, but kind of core ethics of mindfulness. I read about purifying ourselves of greed and hatred and delusion, which I agree with. There's no argument there. What I was trying to understand was, how do you think about those in terms of obviously purifying yourself from those things, while also, it's hard not to judge the fact that you see that in other places either, I would assume, right? You see in the business world, we see greed, we see hatred, we see delusion, but at the same time, the way I read your book was, well, maybe I don't fully understand the situation. I can't judge those things. So how do we speak against those things in the world from a justice perspective, while also maintaining this kind of perspective of no judgment, my truth is my truth? Like, I was having a hard time reconciling those. Can you, like, how do you go and speak on behalf of those issues, right?
It's a brilliant setup for it.
Yeah.
Well, we can only control ourselves, right? So we can control how we act, and we can also control, to some extent, who we deal with, right? That another thing I say in the book, another place, is I want to work with people that make me feel bigger, not the people make me feel smaller, and people that I know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
So if I find someone acting that way, now I may have to deal with them. They may have something, they're the only ones that have it, and I may have to deal with them. But if I don't have to deal with them, I won't. Now, I'm a business guy, and if I have to, I will.
Right.
I'll go in and do what I got to do.
Right.
But I'd prefer not to. So I try to hang around more people that are more like-minded. I also say I like to hang around other givers.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that's how, things magnify. It's leverage.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't, and also, as you said brilliantly, is I don't know what's going on with them. If we each have our own world perspective, I don't know if they're just having a bad day, or somebody really harmed them, or they're on the verge of bankruptcy and they're desperate.
Right.
I really don't know what's going on with them. All I can say is I don't like to act that way.
Yeah.
It's not my operating, method. So I'm going to do my best not to deal with people that I find they're out of bounds with that, and try to find people that I find are like-minded and are trying to improve the community and make money.
Gotcha.
I don't have any problem making money, but I just think there's more than one way to make it.
Right.
So I have a coaching question, and a part of it also dials into definition. You wrote about something called transformational shocks, as well as intense workshop, and I wanted to ask you about that. I'm one who really benefits. I try to go on a fairly intense workshop for myself about every 6 months because I need it. I get too caught up into things where everything is turned off. I've gone to workshops in Tennessee and Arizona, and I'm going next weekend for 4 days in California. I need those to unplug and just kind of reorient myself. And I was curious because I'm like, I wonder if he's talking about the same thing. So tell me about these intense workshops or what you mean by that.
So, yeah, and can I ask you, do you have a daily practice? Do you do any
I have both a
mindfulness,
daily,
anything
I have both a daily practice as well as I would say, quarterly practice as well too.
Great.
So if you really want to know, first thing I do, I get up in the morning, I jump into an ice bath because it kind of gets me going.
My kids got me into that too.
I love it.
Ice plunging.
So I do that, and then I work out, and I'm a Christian, so then I spend time in Scripture, then I pray, and then I'm part of a men's group. But then it's also, I have found for myself, what really helps also are these retreats for myself. And I really wish I would have found them a decade ago.
Yeah. So what I've also found is that the retreats, the intense workshops or whatever by themselves without those daily practices are less useful. I call them slow boils in the book. And Jeff Olson wrote a book called The Slight Edge. If you haven't read it, it's a really good one about how little tiny practices over a long period of time make a massive difference. So I say, those little practices keep me opening. Keep letting go of different things that happen to me every day and keep being open to new possibilities. But then sometimes those transformational shocks can be anything from, there's a thing in there, Steve Jobs with LSD to, or Ram Dass, to workshops like I mentioned in the book or the ice bath or whatnot. They can be great transformational shocks to level it up even higher, that really make you see things. Another things they can really do, depending on the workshop, is show you blind spots, which I've found simple mindfulness practice doesn't always uncover blind spots, particularly if you're doing it yourself. You need another set of eyes, like a coach, consultant, or and I found, especially as CEO, people don't tell me things. They don't go, "Hey, Erik, you're really being a jerk." They just say, "Oh, you're great." So you go in another atmosphere, and I referenced one in the book. I think I was there at a workshop, and somebody said to me, "What are you so angry about?" And I said, "I'm not angry." It was like, oh. And from that point, that uncovered a huge blind spot for me that I got for myself, that I was running closings. I was running my kids, my family, through this disguised anger to get my way. Once I became aware of it, that blind spot, I started going, that's not okay with me. I'm not, that isn't, if I can't convince somebody, logically of what we should do, then maybe I don't need to get my own way. So that can be really a beneficial part of them too, is to get some accurate feedback. And so can coaching or therapy, or, there's a lot of ways to get that. But I have found a shortcoming of mindfulness, maybe by itself, what I would say is meditation, mindfulness has made me very open to hearing those things, and also options for solving them and awareness once they come up. But I've needed another set of eyes or some other kind of thing the other thing you get at those workshops is you see so many other people going through things. I've done dozens of them. You see, oh my God, that, and then you see something that they went through, and you go, oh, I got a little.
And I find that encouraging, actually.
Totally. Yeah, we're human. Yeah. Yeah. So I call those transformational shocks. And one of the things I found through going through a lot of them is that if those are there without the slow boils, the daily practices, we close back up again. A couple of months after, it was like, remember that workshop? Yeah, I felt really good that weekend. But if we can keep a daily practice like the prayer, meditation, gratitude, those kind of things, it can just keep rising up. So that's what I'm recommending in that, is the transformational workshops. Everybody's different. Everybody doesn't like them. I'm really thick-skinned. It takes, I get hit over the head with a sledgehammer sometimes. So they've been great for me, But
what actually led me to Yeah, well, and you referenced a question I was going to ask, which is great. Actually, you jumped down in my list of things I thought was really important. I really liked the blind spots list that you had. Is there, kind of back to the subpersonality question, maybe this is for your son Ryan if he hadn't do this too, but is there an assessment around that? Like how do you assess, or how do you go about finding your own blind spots, right? And obviously mindfulness, you mentioned that being a shortcoming, is what are the ways someone can do that? Is there some assessment or some tool that can be used to do that?
I find the best thing to be feedback.
Okay.
Where you're getting feedback, like in our workshop, we just we have weekly calls as well as intensives and the weekly calls, and we just encouraged everybody and gave them a format and give each other feedback of how they're showing up for each other.
Okay.
Candid feedback, not righteous, not hurtful, just I notice when you do this, it's not productive. This is what I noticed. I think finding a way from a coach or consultant or therapist or a group like you're talking about, one of those workshops to get feedback, uh, is the way that I've done it and found the best. I haven't seen, I mean, starting to look and being aware is huge,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but sometimes we honestly don't know where to look,
Mm-hmm.
and we need another set of eyes
Mm-hmm.
to tell us, hey, look, and not to tell us what it is, but say, hey, look here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Coaching. Hey, look in this area. I'm not telling you have it, but I'm saying it's a possibility. Why don't you look and consider it,
Mm-hmm.
play with it a little bit, and you just look at all the different things. But we all have them.
Mm-hmm.
We all
Oh
have some
yeah.
different blind spots that can be very limiting.
Mm-hmm.
Limiting beliefs is the other one, right?
Mm.
Is what are our limiting beliefs? So we just evaluate that and then see where we're stuck in our life and see what's not working and then dig in.
I absolutely love, in terms of feedback, our company that I lead, we use 360 feedbacks all the time. And what I
That's
find
huge.
fascinating about 360s is someone may be right. And this is where they get stuck, is they're right, but it's coming off a different way. And if it shows up on 2 or 3 other evaluations, they're like, well, I was right. You're right, but you're also a jerk. And that I found that it's really helpful on the 360. Now, we only bring those out once a year because it's almost too much like a retreat. But I found that really, really helpful because sometimes someone can be right, but it's the attitude.
Well, how else is a top executive going to give feedback?
Mm-hmm.
You don't. All you hear is what you want to hear,
Mm-hmm.
right? Unless you surround yourself with people that you've given permission to really give it to you. It takes a lot of confidence. Um, I don't know, the 360 I think is a huge tool to evaluate yourself, because people are not giving top executives feedback unless they may get it from the board after a while. But how often does the board see them?
Mm-hmm.
Once a quarter, once a
Mm-hmm.
month, something like that. And if they're having successful, they don't get it at all. They just get a nod. So I think that kind of thing is huge.
Mm-hmm. How have you found, that actually, another question on that topic, you're bringing up lots of great ones I sort of had thought about but hadn't written down even. How does an executive put themselves in a position to get that feedback? Because it sort of is almost contradictory to the fact that they want to be confident, they want to project leadership, they want to project the ability to sort of get everyone going in the right direction. There's sort of this weird built-in incentive. At least I work a lot in healthcare. There's this weird built-in incentive to really not tell the boss the truth, to keep things going quietly in the same direction. I've seen so many times people leave the room. CEO, I literally had a CEO say, "Yeah, keep going. That looks great." He left the room. All the other VPs sat around and said, "Okay, how do we kill this thing? Because this is a bad idea." They won't tell him the truth.
Exactly.
How does a leader set themselves up for
most
that?
hired, and a lot of times you get to be a CEO because you're a hard driver.
Right.
You go,
Mm-hmm.
right? And hard, I mean, I tell the story in the book there. One of the guys who worked with me, Nathan, I heard him
Mm-hmm.
say one day, "You can't talk to Erik." That really hit me. It
Mm-hmm.
was like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
because it was true. I ran 100 miles an hour, and
Mm-hmm.
I would usually be busy, so I didn't have to talk to everybody.
Mm.
Also, I didn't want to talk to everybody.
Right.
I think you got to put yourself in a situation, and sometimes even you go in another, with a bunch of other CEOs or whatnot, and you're in a different environment. They're not seeing you in that same environment. So
Mm.
somehow a coach or inviting the 360, or you can see, if you put yourself in one of these intense workshops and you see yourself under none of the situations, usually those go-to moves show up. And they don't, somebody there, you're not their boss.
Mm-hmm.
So someone there, but you got to get yourself in a situation where you're inviting it
Mm-hmm.
somehow. And I know the other one I was going to say with your comment before was I had a marriage counselor say something similar, Eric. He said, do you want to be right or you want to be married? That's what I was trying to remember a minute ago. But yeah, I mean, and I didn't, the marriage counselor hit me out with it.
Right.
Said, you're being a jerk. You might be right,
Yeah.
but this is your wife. It's not not a business negotiation, you know?
Yep.
So
No, I appreciate that.
somehow
Yeah.
you gotta invite feedback, I think. And even,
Mm-hmm.
in I spent years just reading Eastern texts and the stories of enlightenment and going sitting on a nail in India. Well, it's pretty, you know what? It's pretty easy to be enlightened if no one's around.
Mm-hmm.
I think
So true.
people are what the challenge
People are the
is,
problem.
including myself. When I get with by myself, I get my own way. I'm all right. But when I get with other people, so I think you have to put yourself in something. And we, in our workshops, our mindful leadership workshops, there's all kinds of exercises we do to put you under things. We do one-on-ones, we have you in triads, and there are things you got to show up for, and things show up over. It's a 9-month program. Things show up,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody doesn't want to deal with everything, but they show up, and you say, "Have you look at this possibility? Look at
Mm-hmm.
this. Is this, and usually when it's affecting somebody, it's affecting them all over the place, not just at work. It's also at home and it blows up,
Mm.
somewhere live. So it's worth
Oh
it.
yeah. Yeah.
I've found it's really worth it once you start looking.
So in your book, you have a number of different pillars. You have pillar 1 or pillar 9. Thinking of all the pillars, in your opinion, what is if you were to guess, what do you think is the biggest blind spot for business leaders today? You know, go dig in this hole, or are they all equal?
Mindfulness,
Mindfulness.
just starting to recognize that we're not our thoughts. We have thoughts, and we didn't even originate them all. They came from all over the place. To separate ourselves so that we can look with a bigger lens at things, not just what we think, but tapping into real gut,
Hmm.
real intuition, real consciousness of things, and to come at things from a much bigger perspective than thought. Thought is really, I mean, it's great, and brilliant people sometimes have it harder than the rest of us
Mm-hmm.
because they're so smart, they usually figure things out. But even that's exhausting and
Mm-hmm.
stressful. Stress and anxiety reside in thought. Peace and joy are in the space between thought and when thought calms. Like when you look at a dramatic view and you go, or the ocean or the moon or whatever it is, that's the mind slowing down. That's what we feel. It's just that calmness of those brain waves going in a different thing. And you can have that in a lot of different situations. And from that position, you can handle a lot.
Mm-hmm.
From in a very busy thought trying to figure things out. And the other thing is that we think we know what's going to happen in the world. We don't know. We don't have any idea next, COVID or 9/11 or tsunami, or interest rates are going to go, or we just don't.
Mm-hmm.
But we're wired we do. And from a bigger perspective, I can just watch and go, well, I don't know what's going to happen, but I can watch and know what I'm going to do if this happens or that happens. I can be, more aware. Uh, So I think that's the biggest thing is mindfulness. And the next thing would be purpose. What is your purpose in life? And then is it profit's not a purpose? Balance sheet's not a purpose. What do you want to do with it?
Mm-hmm.
Those are
Mm-hmm.
results of providing a useful product, and they're great, they're necessary, but it's not a purpose.
Yeah.
Find out what your purpose is in life and why you're here and what you want to accomplish, and make it a little bigger than yourself, and then your life starts getting easier.
And you do that all the time in your coaching. I mean, that's a lot of what you do with, and I've had this conversation too with just even people I've connected with out of this podcast. I've had people reach out and they'll say, well, I'm in my 30s, I've become a CEO and I don't know what else to do, right? What's the purpose, right? So yeah, no, that's huge. I've heard that several times.
Huge journey.
Yeah.
I know with our company, when the vision changed to mindfully caring community, it was a game changer. It gives everybody permission just to do good things around town, and business thrived. People feel better.
Yeah, that's the procession effect, right? We didn't get into that too much, but that was another really cool concept. I like that a lot. We ran out of time. I think we're getting close to the end here, but that was another one that.
There's a lot of.
They'll have to get the book. They're gonna have to get the book.
Yeah, exactly. That's I enjoyed it, so I wrote down a lot. So lots of things to get into. Any final questions?
Well, I have lots more questions, but I guess we'd like to end our interviews with this question. What question haven't we asked you that do you wish we would have asked you?
Oh, gosh. How do you get started?
Yeah, how do you get started?
How do you get started?
Start small and be consistent. People think it takes too much. Don't start with 10 minutes, 20 minutes, of meditation or whatever. Start with 2 minutes. Start with some simple gratitude. Start with taking a walk, without your phone. And over time, you'll want more. But I find that our minds are crazy, and if we go for too much too soon, we get discouraged. To say, I can't meditate, I can't do that. Well, but you can do 2 minutes. And if you can't do 2 minutes, you really need this. So we do 2 minutes. We work them up, over 6 months to 10, to do it. And you want more, and you have more time because you can become more efficient. You stop wasting so much time. So prioritize it.
Well, good. Well, hey, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate it. I love the dialogue, and it also makes me happy knowing you're in the Rocky Mountains right now and just in God's country.
Me too.
Enjoy it. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thanks for having me on. I really
All right. Thanks, Erik. We appreciate your time. Take care.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.